Kimberly Jernigan. The deputy sheriff returned from his morning jog to find his toddler son missing from the front yard. Hours later, when investigators pressed him for answers, he said something that would fracture a small Oregon community. "Ask my wife." What police discovered next would prove that the deepest evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears the face of the person who's supposed to love you most. This is Oregon. From the rain-soaked streets of Portland to the quiet farmlands of Marion County. From coastal tourist towns to rural communities where everyone knows everyone's name. It's a state that prides itself on natural beauty, progressive values, and tight-knit families. But beneath that surface, in living rooms and bedrooms where no one's watching, some of the most unthinkable crimes in recent history have taken place. Between 2019 and 2025, 10 mothers in Oregon were charged with crimes so disturbing they shattered our most fundamental assumptions about parenthood. These aren't stories from decades past. These are cases that made headlines while you were scrolling Instagram, while you were dropping your kids off at school, while you were going about your daily life. These children were living through hell. We're talking about babies thrown away like trash, toddlers drowned in bathtubs, children starved, beaten, poisoned. Some died instantly. Others suffered for months, years, while teachers, neighbors, and family members noticed something was wrong but didn't act in time. And in every single case, the person responsible was the one who should have been their protector, their mother. Today, we're walking through 10 cases that span the entire state. From methamphetamine-fueled violence to calculated, cold-blooded murder. From teenage mothers who panicked to experienced parents who systematically tortured their own children. Some of these cases ended in swift justice. Others dragged on for years, leaving communities traumatized and demanding answers. This isn't just about true crime. It's about the moment when maternal instinct twists into something monstrous. It's about the children who looked up at the one person they trusted most and saw a killer. And it's about the systems, the neighbors, the family members, and the bystanders who saw the warning signs but didn't intervene until it was too late. Before we dive in, I need to warn you. These cases are graphic. They involve child victims, and some details are extremely disturbing. If you need to step away at any point, please do. But if you're ready to confront the darkest corners of human nature, let's begin. This is Most Evil Mothers in Oregon. 10 disturbing cases that shook the state. And we start with the only woman who sat on Oregon's death row for over a decade. Case 1, Angela McAnulty. For over a decade, she held the grim distinction of being the only woman on Oregon's death row. Not for a crime of passion, not for a moment of rage, but for the systematic, calculated torture and murder of her own 15-year-old daughter, Jeanette Maples. This is a case that forced Oregon to confront not just the evil of one mother, but the flaws in its own justice system. December 9th, 2009. Eugene, Oregon. Jeanette Maples died in her own home, weighing just 76 pounds. Her body told a story of prolonged, unimaginable suffering. Investigators documented injuries that read like a torture manual, chemical burns from bleach, starvation so severe her organs were shutting down, evidence of being beaten with a variety of objects, and signs of being kept in isolation for extended periods. But here's what makes this case even more chilling. Jeanette wasn't hidden away in some basement. She lived in a home with siblings, with Angela's boyfriend, Richard, with people who saw what was happening and either participated or turned away. Angela didn't just neglect her daughter. She orchestrated a campaign of abuse that lasted months. She force-fed Jeanette prescription medications. She withheld food while making her watch others eat. She burned her with chemicals. And when Jeanette finally collapsed, Angela waited hours before calling 911, long enough to ensure there was no saving her. The trial came in 2011, and the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors painted a picture of a mother who viewed her daughter as less than human. Angela showed no remorse, no tears, no explanation beyond vague claims that Jeanette was difficult. The jury deliberated and returned with a death sentence, making Angela McAnulty the first woman sentenced to death in Oregon since 1903. She joined Oregon's death row in a state that had already stopped executing prisoners. But symbolically, the sentence mattered. It said, this crime was so heinous, so calculated, that death was the only proportionate response. Then came the legal battles. In 2019, a federal appeals court overturned McAnulty's death sentence, citing inadequate legal representation during the penalty phase of her trial. Her attorneys hadn't presented enough mitigating evidence about her own history of abuse and mental illness. The court didn't question her guilt. That was never in doubt, but they ruled that the death penalty decision had been compromised by poor defense work. In 2020, Angela McAnulty was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was removed from death row, but she'll never walk free. Oregon's death penalty debate had shifted dramatically by then. Governor Kate Brown had imposed a moratorium on executions in 2011, calling the system broken and immoral. The McAnulty case became a focal point in conversations about who deserves death and whether the state should have that power. Today, Angela McAnulty sits in Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, Oregon's women's prison, for the rest of her natural life. She's no longer the only woman on death row because she's no longer on death row at all. But Jeanette Maples is still dead, still 15, still the girl whose mother saw her as something to destroy rather than protect. This case stands as a reminder that some crimes are so monstrous, the justice system itself doesn't know how to respond. Death penalty, life sentence. Does any punishment truly fit the crime of torturing your own child to death? While McAnulty's case represents historical evil that resulted in a death sentence, our next case shows that maternal malevolence didn't end in the past decade. Case 2. Amanda Edwards, the mother who was supposed to protect her special needs son, Thomas Strong. Instead, she and her boyfriend starved him, beat him, and left him to die one day after his 17th birthday. Lakeview, Oregon. Population, 2,200. The kind of small town where high school football games draw the whole community, where everyone waves at everyone, where a teenager wearing homemade paper ties to school becomes a beloved fixture. This is where Thomas Strong grew up, and this is where he died. February 18, 2025. Authorities responded to a home on North D Street and found Thomas's body. He had just turned 17 the day before. There was no party, no cake, no celebration. Just a boy weighing far less than he should, covered in injuries that told the story of months of torture. Thomas was a special needs student at Lakeview High School. His classmates didn't remember him for his disability. They remembered him for his creativity, his smile, his signature paper ties that he made by hand and wore proudly every single day. While other kids were worried about brand names and fitting in, Thomas was folding notebook paper into intricate neckties and showing up to school with joy. He was one of the kindest kids I've ever taught, one of his teachers later told reporters. He'd light up when you talked to him. He wanted so badly to be included, to be seen, and his classmates loved him for it. Those paper ties? They became his thing. Kids would ask him to make them one. He was proud of that. But at home, Thomas's life was hell. Prosecutors say Amanda Edwards and her boyfriend Nathan Cullins subjected Thomas to prolonged physical abuse, starvation, and criminal neglect. This wasn't a one-time incident. This wasn't a parent who lost their temper. This was systematic, deliberate, sustained. Both Amanda Edwards and Nathan Cullins were arrested and charged with murder, first-degree criminal mistreatment, first-degree assault, and second-degree assault. They're being held without bail as the case moves through the system. And here's the part that makes this even more gut-wrenching. The system knew. Oregon's Department of Human Services had been involved with the family. There were warning signs. Teachers noticed Thomas losing weight, showing up with bruises, becoming withdrawn. But the interventions came too late. A protection order was issued, but Thomas was already dead. Lake County is a place where everyone knows everyone. Thomas's death didn't just shock the community, it shattered it. Lakeview High School held a memorial where students wore paper ties in his honor, hundreds of them. kids who barely knew Thomas folded their own ties and wore them for a week straight. The school established the Paper Tie Scholarship in his name, awarded annually to a student who demonstrates kindness and creativity despite facing adversity. One of Thomas's classmates wrote on social media, "He never hurt anyone. He just wanted to be somebody's friend. He made those ties because he thought they made him look professional. He was so proud of them. And now he's gone because the two people who were supposed to love him most didn't." Thomas Strong spent 17 years trying to be seen, trying to belong, creating something beautiful out of notebook paper because that's what he had. His teachers saw him, his classmates saw him. But at home, Amanda Edwards and Nathan Cullins saw him as something else, something they could hurt, something they could break. And so they did. Case 3. Sarah Session. A special education teacher. Someone parents trusted to help their most vulnerable children. Someone trained in patience, in understanding, in protecting kids who couldn't always protect themselves. She's now facing 19 felony counts, including attempted murder, for torturing a child so brutally that prosecutors say she tried to kill them. Let that sink in. The person whose job was to educate and support special needs students allegedly beat a child with a curtain rod, forced them to eat their own vomit, and poisoned them. This case doesn't just cross the line between parent and predator. It crosses the line between educator and abuser. And when the charges came down, Sarah Session and her entire family ran. The timeline starts in November 2023. That's when prosecutors say the abuse began. For months between November 2023 and February 2024, a child in Sarah Sessions' care endured what investigators describe as sustained sadistic torture. Beaten with a curtain rod hard enough to leave lasting injuries, forced to consume their own vomit as punishment, and according to charging documents poisoned, though the exact substance and method haven't been fully disclosed to the public. This was someone the child knew, someone they should have been able to trust. Sarah Session wasn't just any caregiver. She worked as a special education teacher at Ponderosa Elementary in Bend, Oregon, and later with Evergreen Virtual Academy. She had credentials, training, years of experience working with children who needed extra support. Parents sent their kids to her believing she'd help them grow, help them learn, help them feel safe. Instead, she's accused of trying to murder one of them. When authorities issued an arrest warrant in early 2025, Sarah Session didn't turn herself in. She ran. And she didn't run alone. Her parents, Gary and Paula Hardenberg, allegedly helped her flee. The three of them disappeared, sparking a multi-county manhunt that stretched from Bend to the Oregon coast. For weeks, investigators tracked leads. Tips came in from across the state. Law enforcement issued public alerts warning that Sarah Session could be a danger to children. The case made headlines, and the pressure mounted. February 2025. Police finally located Sarah Session and her parents at a Best Western hotel in Coos Bay, a coastal town over 200 miles from Bend. They were arrested without incident. Sarah was taken into custody and booked on 19 felony counts: attempted murder, multiple counts of first-degree criminal mistreatment, first-degree assault, and unlawful delivery of a controlled substance to a minor. Her parents, Gary and Paula Hardenberg, were charged with hindering prosecution for allegedly helping Sarah evade arrest. The case is still moving through the courts, but the damage is done. Not just to the child who survived, but to every parent who trusted Sarah Session with their kid, to every school district that hired her, to every colleague who worked alongside her and never suspected. This is the nightmare scenario every parent fears. The person you trust to protect your child is the one hurting them. And when that person is a trained educator, someone who passed background checks, someone with degrees and certifications, it feels even more impossible to prevent. The child in this case survived. But what they went through, what they'll carry for the rest of their life, is unimaginable. These cases are difficult to hear, but it's important we don't look away. These children's stories deserve to be told. If you're still here, I appreciate you bearing witness with me. Real quick, what time is it where you're watching? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious where in the world you all are right now. Case 4, Shawna Browning. A mother whose 9-year-old daughter, Mae Coblentz, was found dead in a duffel bag at a rest stop. A mother who never reported her child missing. A mother who was charged with aggravated murder, and then had those charges quietly dropped. December 10th, 2020. A traveler pulls into the H.B. Van Duzer Forest State Scenic Corridor, a remote rest stop along Highway 18 between the Oregon coast and the Willamette Valley. It's the kind of place people stop to stretch their legs, use the restroom, maybe take a photo of the towering trees. Peaceful, quiet, forgettable. Except someone left something there, a duffel bag, abandoned near the edge of the parking area. When authorities opened it, they found the body of a young girl approximately 9 years old. But here's what makes this case even more haunting. Nobody had reported her missing. Think about that. A child dies. A child's body is dumped at a rest stop like trash, and not a single missing persons report matches her description. No frantic parents calling police. No Amber Alert. No desperate search. Just silence. For over a year, Mae Coblentz was a Jane Doe. Investigators worked tirelessly to identify her, running DNA tests, checking missing persons databases, reaching out to agencies across the state. It wasn't until late 2021 that they finally put a name to the little girl in the duffel bag. Mae Coblentz, 9 years old, December 2021. Authorities arrested Haley's mother, Shawna Browning, and another woman, Lauren Harrison. Both were charged with aggravated murder. Finally, it seemed like justice was coming. Finally, someone would answer for what happened to Haley. But then something strange happened. The charges were dropped. Not because new evidence exonerated them, not because someone else was arrested, but in furtherance of justice, a vague legal phrase that essentially means prosecutors decided not to move forward. In furtherance of justice. What justice? Haley is still dead. She was still found in a duffel bag at a rest stop. She was still never reported missing by the woman who gave birth to her. The Lincoln County District Attorney's Office has been tight-lipped about why the charges were dropped. They've hinted that the investigation is ongoing, that charges could potentially be refiled, but as of now, no one has been held accountable for Haley's death. So what happened to Mae Coblentz? How did she die? Why did her mother never report her missing? Why was her body dumped at a rest stop? And why did the legal system let the only 2 people charged in her death walk free? We don't have answers. And that's the tragedy within the tragedy. Case 5. Alnath Omar Oliver. That's the name of the man who took his newborn daughter and threw her away at a recycling center like trash. May 28, 2013. A recycling worker at the EFI Recycling Center in Portland makes a discovery that will haunt the city for a decade. Tucked between commercial waste and discarded metal, wrapped in plastic, is the body of a newborn baby girl. Umbilical cord still attached. Eyes never opened to the world. Dead. The baby was full term, healthy, born just days before someone threw her away like garbage. Authorities named her Baby Precious. For 10 years, that's all she was. A name without a story, a victim without justice, until 2023. But let's go back to who she really was. Her name was Amara Oliver. She was born in 2013 to a 15-year-old girl who thought she was handing her newborn to the baby's father so he could take her to the hospital. That's what he told her. That's what she believed for 10 years. Instead, Alnath Omar Oliver, 53 years old at the time of his arrest, took that baby and disposed of her at a recycling center on North Commerce Street. For a decade, the case went cold. Detectives released the baby's handprints and footprints to the public. Tips came in, but none led anywhere. Baby Precious became a symbol of Portland's unsolved tragedies. The community rallied around her memory. Local leader Joyce Harris organized a memorial and burial. She was loved. We never met her, but we cared for her. Harris later said, the investigation changed hands. New detective, new approach. Tissue samples were sent to a forensic genetic genealogy lab. In December 2021, A family connection emerged. Another year and a half of painstaking work followed before investigators identified baby Amara and her father. Detectives confronted Oliver's then teenage girlfriend, now an adult. She broke down. She'd been 15 when she gave birth. Alone. Terrified. Oliver was the adult. The father. The one she trusted. She was not aware that her child was deceased, Detective Brendan McGuire explained during a 2023 press conference. She has believed since day one that Omar took the baby to the hospital. He didn't. He took Amara to a recycling center and left her there to be discovered by a worker who would carry that image for the rest of his life. In September 2023, a grand jury indicted Oliver on charges of manslaughter, criminal mistreatment, rape, and concealing the birth of an infant. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. 4 years. For stealing every single moment Amara would have had. Her first laugh, her first word, her first day of school, her first love, her children, her life. The system failed twice. Once when a 15-year-old was impregnated by an adult, and again when baby Precious lay in that recycling center for days before anyone found her. Oregon has safe haven laws. Any parent can surrender a newborn up to 30 days old at a hospital, fire station, or police department without facing criminal charges. No questions asked, no judgment, just safety. But Amara never got that chance. Her mother didn't know she needed it. She trusted the wrong person. This case took 10 years to solve, not because of lack of effort, but because the technology didn't exist yet. Forensic genetic genealogy, the same tool used to catch the Golden State Killer, finally gave baby Precious her name back. And it gave the community closure, even if justice feels hollow. Today, Amara is buried, remembered, loved by people who never knew her, but refused to let her be forgotten. Case 6. 10 children. That's how many died in the first 3 months of 2025 while under the supervision of Oregon's Department of Human Services. 10 children who were supposed to be protected by the system. 10 children who never made it out of their first year of life. This isn't about one evil mother. This is about a pattern, a systemic failure, a quiet, invisible kind of neglect that doesn't make headlines until the body count gets too high to ignore. In March 2025, Oregon DHS released a quarterly report that should have set off alarms across the state. 10 child fatalities between January and March. Half of them were infants, babies between 1 month and 18 months old. Babies who couldn't walk yet, couldn't talk yet, couldn't ask for help. And the common thread? Unsafe sleep environments combined with parental substance abuse, specifically marijuana use. Let's be clear. This isn't a marijuana legalization debate. This is about impaired parents placing infants in dangerous sleep situations and not waking up when their baby stops breathing. It's about babies left face down on soft bedding, in adult beds with pillows and blankets, co-sleeping with intoxicated parents who roll over in the night. It's about the kind of neglect that doesn't look violent, but is just as deadly. These babies don't have names in the public record. Privacy laws protect their identities. But they existed. A 2-month-old found unresponsive in a bed shared with 3 adults. A 5-month-old who suffocated on a couch cushion while a parent slept nearby, too high to hear the baby struggling. An 11-month-old placed in a crib filled with stuffed animals and blankets, a setup that every safe sleep guideline warns against. Oregon legalized recreational marijuana in 2014. Since then, child welfare advocates have tracked a troubling correlation, an increase in infant deaths linked to impaired parenting and unsafe sleep. It's not causation. There are multiple factors at play, but the data is stark enough that DHS officials are calling it a crisis. We're seeing a spike in preventable deaths, one DHS spokesperson told reporters. These are not mysterious illnesses. These are environmental factors that we know how to prevent, but we're not reaching parents in time. Advocacy groups like the Oregon Child Abuse Prevention Alliance have been sounding the alarm for years. They're calling for mandatory safe sleep education for new parents, increased home visits for at-risk families, and better coordination between DHS and hospitals. They're pushing for substance abuse treatment programs specifically designed for parents of infants. But policy moves slow. Bureaucracy moves slow. And while lawmakers debate funding and reform, babies keep dying. Here's what kills me about these cases. They're preventable. Every single one. A firm mattress, no blankets, baby on their back, in their own sleep space. That's it. That's the difference between life and death. Add in a sober caregiver who checks on the baby regularly, and the risk drops even further. But for 10 families in Oregon, that didn't happen. 10 babies who could be crawling right now, babbling their first words, smiling at their parents. Instead, they're statistics in a DHS report. Not all evil is loud and violent. Sometimes it's quiet, neglectful, and hidden behind closed doors. Sometimes it's a parent too impaired to notice their baby isn't breathing. Sometimes it's a system too overwhelmed to intervene before it's too late. Case 7. No name. That's all we have for the woman who was found dead alongside her 3 young children in Cornelius, Oregon on April 8, 2025. No name. No cause of death. No clear answers. Just 4 bodies and a community demanding to know what happened. April 8, 2025. A man returns home to a building attached to his residence in Cornelius, a quiet suburb in Washington County just outside Portland. What he finds inside will haunt him for the rest of his life. His partner, a 37-year-old woman, is dead. So are their 3 children, a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old. 4 people who were alive that morning are now gone, and no one will say how or why. The man calls 911. Police and emergency responders flood the scene. Within hours, the Cornelius Police Department issues a statement that raises more questions than it answers. There is no danger to the public. This appears to be an isolated incident. An isolated incident. That's police language for, this wasn't a break-in. This wasn't a stranger. This was someone inside the home. But they won't say more. They won't release the identities of the victims. They won't confirm the cause of death. They won't say whether the mother is a suspect or a victim. Police Chief Mitch Coley addressed the media with a grim face. Our community has been shaken to its core, he said. This is a tragedy that will impact everyone who knew this family. We are investigating thoroughly, but out of respect for the family and the integrity of the investigation, we cannot release further details at this time. Out of respect for the family. But what about the public's right to know? What about the neighbors who live on the same street and are now terrified? What about the parents in Cornelius who are looking at their own kids and wondering what kind of danger exists behind closed doors? Here's what makes this case even more tragic. The family had just returned home after being displaced by a fire. They'd survived one disaster, rebuilt their lives, moved back into their home. And then, weeks later, they're all dead. Was it murder-suicide? Was the mother struggling with postpartum depression, financial stress, or trauma from the fire? Did she snap? Or was this something else entirely? A gas leak? Carbon monoxide poisoning? Some kind of accident that police are keeping quiet while they investigate? We don't know. And that's the problem. In every other case we've covered today, we have names, we have charges, we have timelines and evidence and trials. But in Cornelius, we have silence. The kind of silence that makes people speculate. The kind of silence that lets rumors spread faster than facts. 3 children, a toddler, a kindergartner, and a 2nd grader, are dead. If their mother is responsible, this is one of the most devastating cases in recent Oregon history. If she's not, if this was something else, then the public deserves to know so they can protect their own families. As of now, the investigation is ongoing. No arrests have been made. No suspects have been named. The bodies have been sent for autopsy, but results haven't been made public. Cornelius is a town of about 12,000 people. The kind of place where a tragedy like this doesn't just make the news, it ripples through every school, every church, every grocery store. Parents are holding their kids a little tighter. Neighbors are asking questions the police won't answer. And 3 children who should be playing in their backyard right now are gone. Case 8. Shaina Sweitzer, a 31-year-old mother who loved her 9-month-old daughter, Olivia. A woman trapped in a relationship with a man whose violence would eventually consume her, her baby, and his own parents in one horrific night. This case is different. Shaina wasn't the perpetrator. She was a victim. But her story belongs here because it reveals a truth we can't ignore. Sometimes, mothers can't protect their children because they can't even protect themselves. January 19, 2019. Canby, Oregon. A quiet suburban community just south of Portland. The kind of place where people move to raise families, where crime is low and neighbors wave at each other. That night, deputies responded to a home on South Ivy Street for a welfare check. What they found was a massacre. Mark Gago, Shaina's boyfriend and Olivia's father, had taken an axe hammer and murdered 4 people. His girlfriend, Shaina, their 9-month-old baby, Olivia, his own mother, Olivia Gago Sr., his own father, Jerry Bremer. 4 bodies. 4 people who trusted him, lived with him, loved him. And he wasn't done. When deputies arrived, Gago was actively attacking a 5th person, his own brother. Officers shot and killed Gago on the scene, stopping what would have been a 5th murder. 9-month-old Olivia Gago never had a chance. She was barely old enough to crawl. She didn't know that the man holding the weapon was her father. She didn't know that her mother had already been killed trying to protect her. She just knew terror, and then she knew nothing. Shaina Sweitzer was 31 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. Friends described her as caring, devoted to Olivia, always putting her daughter first. But they also said something else. She was afraid. She'd confided in people close to her that Mark was controlling, that he had a temper, that she was scared but didn't know how to leave safely. This is the reality of domestic violence. It doesn't always escalate slowly. Sometimes it explodes. And when children are involved, they become collateral damage in a war they didn't start and can't escape. Investigators later revealed that there had been warning signs, arguments that neighbors heard, tension that family members noticed. But like so many domestic violence situations, it stayed behind closed doors until it was too late. Shaina may have been trying to protect Olivia by staying quiet, by not making waves, by hoping things would get better. Or she may have been planning to leave and didn't get the chance. We'll never know, because Mark Gago made sure she couldn't tell her story. The Canby community was devastated. 4 people dead in a single night, including a baby. Vigils were held. Counselors were brought into local schools. People who knew the family struggled to make sense of how someone could kill their own parents, their own girlfriend, their own infant daughter. But here's the lesson. This isn't about making sense of it. This is about recognizing the signs before it gets to this point. Domestic violence isn't always physical at first. It's control. It's isolation. It's threats. It's making someone feel like they can't leave, can't ask for help, can't protect their kids. Shaina Sweitzer couldn't save herself. She couldn't save Olivia. Not because she didn't try, but because the man who was supposed to love them was the one who killed them. This case reminds us that when we talk about evil mothers, we also have to talk about the mothers who are victims, the mothers who are murdered alongside their children, the mothers who are trapped in abusive relationships and don't make it out alive. Case 9. Bad Behi, a 40-year-old father who decided that if he was going to die, his entire family would die with him. His wife, Hannah, his 3 children, ages 11, 9, and 7. 4 innocent people executed because one man couldn't live with whatever demons were in his head. August 11, 2025. Josephine County deputies respond to a welfare check at a property near Pickett Creek, just outside Grants Pass in southern Oregon. It's rural out there, properties spread out, neighbors not too close, the kind of place where you can hear the creek running and see stars at night. The kind of place families move to for peace and quiet. What deputies found was anything but peaceful. Hannah Behi, 42 years old, was dead. So were her 3 children, an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old. All 4 had been killed by Chad Behe before he turned the weapon on himself. Murder-suicide, the kind that wipes out an entire family in one horrific act. Hannah wasn't an evil mother. She was a victim. By all accounts, she was a loving, devoted parent. Friends and family described her as the kind of mom who put her kids first in everything. School events, sports, family dinners. She showed up. She cared. She was present. The children were described as full of life and promise. An 11-year-old just starting middle school. A 9-year-old who loved soccer. A 7-year-old who still believed in magic. 3 kids who should have had decades ahead of them. Graduations, first loves, careers, families of their own. Instead, their father decided their lives were his to take. The community of Grants Pass was devastated. A GoFundMe was set up to help with funeral expenses. Family members released statements expressing their grief and disbelief. "We never saw this coming," one relative said. "Hannah and the kids were everything to us. We can't understand why Chad would do this." That's the question everyone asks after a familicide. Why? What drives a person to murder their own children, their own spouse, and then themselves? Experts say it's often tied to a sense of control. If a man feels like he's losing control of his life, his family, his future, he may decide to take everyone with him as a final act of dominance. Sometimes there are warning signs: financial stress, marital problems, threats of separation, depression, but other times it seems to come out of nowhere. A man who seemed fine one day is a family annihilator the next. Chad Behe's motives may never be fully understood. Investigators haven't released details about what led to the murders. No history of domestic violence had been publicly reported. No protective orders. No prior calls to law enforcement. Just a family that existed one day and was gone the next. This case is included here not because Hannah was an evil mother, but because her story is a critical part of the conversation. When we talk about children who die at the hands of a parent, we can't only focus on mothers who kill. We have to acknowledge the fathers who kill too, and the mothers who die trying to protect their kids or who are murdered alongside them. Hannah Behe and her 3 children deserved better. They deserved a future. They deserved safety in their own home. Instead, they became another statistic in America's ongoing crisis of family violence. Case 10. Michael John Wolfe, a 52-year-old man who decided that paying $900 a month in child support was too much. So he murdered his 3-year-old son, William Billy, and the boy's 25-year-old mother, Karissa Fretwell. Then he made their bodies disappear so completely that, to this day, they've never been found. May 13, 2019. Salem, Oregon. Karissa Fretwell, a young single mother, and her 3-year-old son Billy vanish without a trace. No goodbye texts, no signs of planning a trip, no activity on her phone or bank accounts. Just gone. Karissa was 25 years old. She worked hard to support Billy. She wasn't asking for handouts. She wasn't trying to ruin anyone's life. She just wanted the father of her child to help provide for him. That's it. That's all. $900 a month in court-ordered child support. Michael John Wolfe, 52, was Billy's father. He'd had a brief relationship with Karissa years earlier. When she got pregnant, he wanted nothing to do with the child. But the courts disagreed. In early 2019, Wolfe was ordered to pay child support, $900 a month. Not an outrageous amount, not enough to bankrupt him, just enough to help feed, clothe, and house his son. Wolfe was furious. He appealed the decision. He tried to get the amount reduced. He complained to anyone who would listen that Karissa was ruining his life. And when the legal system didn't give him what he wanted, he decided to take matters into his own hands. May 13, 2019. Surveillance footage shows Wolfe near Karissa's apartment. Text messages between the two suggest he lured her into meeting him under some pretense. After that, Karissa and Billy were never seen again. For weeks, search teams combed through forests, rivers, and rural properties across the Salem area. Volunteers distributed flyers. Family members made tearful pleas on the news, but Karissa and Billy had vanished. Then investigators started piecing together the digital trail: cell phone pings, surveillance footage, text messages, credit card transactions, bank records. All of it pointed to one person, Michael John Wolfe. In 2020, Wolfe was arrested and charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder and kidnapping. The trial was complex because there were no bodies, no murder weapon, no witnesses to the actual killings, just mountains of circumstantial evidence. But it was enough. Prosecutors built a timeline showing Wolfe's movements on the day Karissa and Billy disappeared. They showed his financial motive. They showed his anger over the child support order. They showed how he tried to cover his tracks, deleting messages, avoiding certain areas he knew had cameras. In 2021, a jury found Michael John Wolfe guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the verdict didn't bring Karissa and Billy home. Their bodies have never been recovered. Their final resting place remains a secret Wolfe has refused to share. Karissa Fretwell wasn't an evil mother. She was the opposite. She was a young woman trying to do right by her son. She could have let Wolfe walk away, never asked for a dime, struggled alone. But she knew Billy deserved better. She went to court. She fought for child support. She stood up for her son, and it cost her everything. 3-year-old Billy never got to go to kindergarten, never got to learn to ride a bike, never got to grow up. His mother never got to see him graduate, never got to meet his friends, never got to watch him become whoever he was meant to be, because one man valued $900 a month more than 2 human lives. This case is a reminder that when we talk about children killed by parents, we can't only focus on mothers. Fathers kill too. And sometimes the mother dies trying to protect her child, trying to do the right thing, trying to make sure her son has what he needs. Karissa and Billy are still out there somewhere. Their family holds vigils every year, hoping that one day Wolfe will develop a conscience and tell them where to look. But so far he stayed silent. 2 lives erased. 2 bodies hidden. 1 mother who fought for her child and paid the ultimate price. 6 out of 20. That's how many children who died under Oregon DHS supervision in 2024 had disabilities. 6 vulnerable kids who couldn't always communicate their pain, couldn't always defend themselves, couldn't always tell someone they were being hurt. And that's just the ones DHS was already watching. How many others slipped through the cracks entirely? We already talked about Thomas Strong, the 17-year-old special needs student from Lakeview, who made paper ties and was found dead one day after his birthday, allegedly, starved and beaten by his mother Amanda Edwards and her boyfriend. Thomas had autism. He was trusting. He wanted to belong. And the people who were supposed to protect him used his vulnerability as a weapon. But Thomas wasn't an anomaly. He's part of a disturbing pattern that advocacy groups have been screaming about for years. Children with disabilities are at significantly higher risk of abuse and neglect than their non-disabled peers. Studies show they're up to 3 times more likely to experience maltreatment. Why? Because they're often more dependent on caregivers. Because they may not be able to verbally report abuse. Because society views them as burdens rather than people. Because the systems designed to protect them are stretched so thin they can't keep up. Disability Rights Oregon has been sounding the alarm. In reports and testimonies to state legislators, they've highlighted case after case where disabled children were failed by the very agencies meant to safeguard them. Caseworkers who didn't follow up. Medical professionals who missed signs of abuse. Teachers who noticed something was wrong but didn't know how to report it. And parents or caregivers who saw their disabled child as something to resent, something to punish, something to discard. Take a moment and think about what it's like to be a child who can't speak, can't walk, can't fight back. You depend on your mother for everything: food, water, safety, love. And when that mother decides you're too much trouble, when she starts withholding meals, or hitting you when you can't control your behavior, or locking you away so she doesn't have to deal with you, who do you tell? How do you escape? You can't. You just endure. Until your body gives out, or someone finally notices, or it's too late. Justice delayed is justice denied. not just for victims, but for everyone waiting for closure. And in Oregon, closure can take a very, very long time. Where are they now? Behind bars, some of them. Others are awaiting trial. A few walked free, and 2 killed themselves before they could face justice. Here's where the perpetrators from these 10 cases are today. Angela McAnulty sits in Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, Oregon's women's prison, serving life without parole. She's no longer on death row, but she'll never leave prison. She's in her 50s now. Jeanette would have been 30. Amanda Edwards and Nathan Cullins are in custody awaiting trial for Thomas Strong's murder. They've been held without bail since February 2025. Their trial could take months, maybe years. Thomas's community is waiting. Sarah Session is being held on $1 million bond, facing 19 felony counts including attempted murder. Her parents, Gary and Paula Hardenberg, were charged with hindering prosecution for helping her flee. All 3 are awaiting trial. Shawna Browning and Lauren Harrison, charged with murdering 9-year-old Mae Coblentz, had their charges dropped in 2021 in furtherance of justice. They're free. Haley is still dead. The case remains in legal limbo with no clear path to justice. Alnath Omar Oliver, who disposed of baby Precious, served his 4-year sentence and is likely already out. 4 years for throwing away his newborn daughter. 4 years for letting her be nameless for a decade. That's Oregon justice. Mark Gago never made it to trial. He was shot and killed by deputies in January 2019 as he attacked his 5th victim. Shaina Sweitzer and baby Olivia never got to see him face justice. Neither did his parents, both murdered by their own son. Chad Behe took the coward's way out. After murdering Hannah and their 3 children in August 2025, he killed himself. No trial, no answers, no accountability. Michael John Wolfe is serving life without parole for the murders of Karissa Fretwell and 3-year-old Billy. He's never revealed where their bodies are. The family holds out hope he'll eventually tell them. So far, he hasn't. Then there are the survivors. Siblings who watched their brothers and sisters die. The 15-year-old girl who trusted Alnath Omar Oliver to take her baby to the hospital and didn't know for 10 years that he'd killed her. The child who survived Sarah Sessions' abuse and testified about being forced to eat vomit and being beaten with a curtain rod. And the families. Parents who buried their grandchildren. Siblings who lost nieces and nephews. Teachers who can't forget the students they couldn't save. Communities that will carry these scars for generations. Some got justice, some didn't, and some are still waiting. Judge and jury that this wasn't just a victim, this was a child with a name, a personality, a future stolen. Sentencing disparities are glaring. Alnath Omar Oliver got 4 years for disposing of his newborn daughter's body and letting her be known as Baby Precious for a decade. 4 years. Meanwhile, others face life. The difference often comes down to what prosecutors can prove, what charges they file, and what deals get made behind closed doors. Appeals drag on for years. McAnulty's case took 9 years from conviction to resentencing. Wolfe's case is still winding through the system. Families wait. Communities move on. But the defendants sit in prison, filing motions, hoping for technicalities that might shave years off their sentences. Justice delayed is justice denied, not just for victims, but for everyone waiting for closure. And in Oregon, closure can take a very, very long time. Where are they now? Behind bars. Some of them. Others are awaiting trial. A few walked free, and 2 killed themselves before they could face justice. Here's where the perpetrators from these 10 cases are today. Angela McAnulty sits in Coffee Creek Correctional Facility, Oregon's women's prison, serving life without parole. She's no longer on death row, but she'll never leave prison. She's in her 50s now. Jeanette would have been 30. Amanda Edwards and Nathan Cullins are in custody awaiting trial for Thomas Strong's murder. They've been held without bail since February 2025. Their trial could take months, maybe years. Thomas's community is waiting. Sarah Session is being held on $1 million bond, facing 19 felony counts including attempted murder. Her parents, Gary and Paula Hardenberg, were charged with hindering prosecution for helping her flee. All 3 are awaiting trial. Shawna Browning and Lauren Harrison, charged with murdering 9-year-old Mae Coblentz, had their charges dropped in 2021 in furtherance of justice. They're free. Haley is still dead. The case remains in legal limbo with no clear path to justice. Alnath Omar Oliver, who disposed of Baby Precious, served his 4-year sentence and is likely already out. 4 years for throwing away his newborn daughter. 4 years for letting her be nameless for a decade. That's Oregon justice. Mark Gago never made it to trial. He was shot and killed by deputies in January 2019 as he attacked his 5th victim. Shaina Sweitzer and baby Olivia never got to see him face justice. Neither did his parents, both murdered by their own son. Chad Bahee took the coward's way out. After murdering Hannah and their 3 children in August 2025, he killed himself. No trial, no answers, no accountability. John Wolfe is serving life without parole for the murders of Karissa Fretwell and 3-year-old Billy. He's never revealed where their bodies are. The family holds out hope he'll eventually tell them. So far, he hasn't. The unnamed mother from the Cornelius tragedy in April 2025 was never charged. Authorities still haven't confirmed whether she killed her 3 children or died alongside them. The investigation continues, but the community has been left in the dark. The mothers involved in the DHS infant deaths have varying statuses. Some were never charged. Some faced lesser charges like criminal negligence. None faced murder charges. The system deemed their babies' deaths tragic accidents, not crimes. Then there are the survivors, siblings who watched their brothers and sisters die. The 15-year-old girl who trusted Alnath Omar Oliver to take her baby to the hospital and didn't know for 10 years that he'd killed her. The child who survived Sarah Sessions' abuse and testified about being forced to eat vomit and being beaten with a curtain rod. And the families, parents who buried their grandchildren, siblings who lost nieces and nephews, teachers who can't forget the students they couldn't save, communities that will carry these scars for generations. Some got justice, some didn't, and some are still waiting.